1. My name is Saiban Ahmad. I'm 23 now, and a half. This story took place in 2004 when I was 8 or 9 years old, and the other half in 2015. Risalpur is a city in Nowshera district, Khyber, Pakhtunkhwa, Pakistan. It is nearly 45 kilometers from Peshawar, and 15 kilometers from Mardan. I spent the first 13 years of my life there. My father is in the military, Air Force, and we lived in the Air Force base. The whole area, a residential area, mostly consists of flats in 2- and 3-story buildings. When I was a kid, about 8 or 9 years old, I always visited a park. It was in the corner of Risalpur base. There was a small graveyard right beside that park, and there is one huge water tank between the park and graveyard, except that there were no boundary walls or anything that separates the graveyard from the park. I don't remember that I ever saw someone in that graveyard, because most of the graves in there are of newborn kids. On one beautiful evening when I was going to the park that I visit each weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it's important that I mention that the walking distance from my house to that park was not much, but still my house was a few blocks away from the park, and it was about a 10-minute walk from my house to the park. That was a very boring day. It was Friday, I assume. The whole day I was waiting and planning to go to that park. Right when I was a few meters away from the park in front of that graveyard, I saw something very strange. You may think what I'm going to say next isn't really that strange or weird, but I'll explain why it was strange. I saw someone, another person, a boy of 18, 20 years old, walk back to the opposite direction where I was heading. It seems like he was coming out from that graveyard. Right as he walks by me, I noticed that he looked like someone else in my family. He looked related to me, somehow, but I kept walking. As he passed, it seemed he wanted to tell me something. I continued and put this weirdness in the back of my mind, but I failed. I know it is something that you should forget or shrug off. I couldn't shake the feeling that he looked so familiar or related to me that I noticed nothing strange. I was wearing blue jeans and a white half-sleeve t-shirt with dark, cartoonish figure on it, and when I got there I had the usual fun. I always enjoyed my time there, the park, and in that city, Risalpur. Now fast forward to 2015, the second part. I haven't visited Risalpur since 2006. I'm currently living in Bahawalpur, which is approximately 12 to 14 hours drive away from Risalpur. I did miss that place very much, the place where I spent my childhood, the place where I created countless memories. It felt like it had been a lifetime since I had seen that place, so in 2015, when I was on a private trip to Islamabad, I decided to go there. And upon reaching there, I took some rest at a friend's house. In the evening, I went to the same graveyard, I'll explain later why I went there, and the park. I spent almost 20 minutes there, and then I started walking back to the direction of my old house, because I wanted to see that house to refresh some old memories. As soon as I left there, I saw a young boy, he was almost 8 years old at the most, wearing blue jeans and a white half-sleeve t-shirt with dark, cartoonish figure drawn on it. As I walked by him, I was figuring out the right words to say to him, but I couldn't. I was distracted because something felt so weird about that kid. Only when I returned home to Bahawalpur, I realized that the 8-year-old boy that I walked by was me. It was me. I figured I think that because he looked familiar or related to me. Then I recalled back when I encountered the future me, when I was a little 8-year-old boy. I was so confused at first, but then everything was puzzled together. Back then I saw myself as the future self now. I just saw my past self. It was the most bizarre and mind-bending thing. He was wearing the exact same clothes that I wore in the past. This is something that I remember forever. I found it very special because I never heard of an experience quite like this. As I said above, I'll explain why I went to that graveyard during my recent visit. That's because when I was 3 years old, my newborn, 2 days old brother died and was buried in that same graveyard. When I went there, I went to look for the grave of my brother, and what I saw there was nothing but plain ground. 2. I've been noticing some really weird things going on with my pets, but my family doesn't seem to notice at all. Okay, so first of all, I have a cat named Bree, and a little puppy named Eden. I'll start with my cat. We've had Bree for 7 years now, and the first time I noticed something odd happening was about 5 years ago. We started bringing her outside to just explore the world and enjoy the fresh air. We tried to keep her within our yard, as not to annoy the neighbors. So one day I saw her laying on my neighbor's driveway across the street from my window. I quickly ran to get my shoes, and when I returned she was gone. I panicked a little, and ran out to go find her, afraid she went into their backyard. I searched and searched, but I couldn't find her anywhere. I asked the neighbors, and they hadn't seen her. I started crying and ran home to tell my mom that Bree's missing. I got inside and there was Bree, just sitting on the office chair. This experience was weird, but I figured she came back on her own and my mom let her in, even though I didn't hear or see it. The next thing happened about a year after the first time. I was sitting at the kitchen table doing my homework. On one side of my kitchen table we have a long bench that stretches the length of the table. So I was sitting on the bench and Bree was laying next to me. Bree woke up and jumped down. When she wants to go outside, she usually scratches at the storm door until we let her out. At this time my mom grounded Bree because she couldn't stay in our yard for some reason, so we weren't to let her outside. I stood up to close the main door, but when I got there, I realized that she was actually scratching to be let in from outside. Now obviously that is impossible. There's no way she could have gotten outside. But there she was. I let her in and just sat there puzzled for a few minutes. Bree was going on with her life like nothing even happened. One more story about Bree and then I'll talk about what's going on with Eden. So on the main floor of my house, the kitchen and library are next to each other, only separated by a wall. My ceilings are really tall, so the wall that separates them doesn't reach all the way to the top of the ceiling. This creates a little ledge that my cat likes to sit on sometimes. The ledge is really high up, and takes a considerable amount of time to get her up and down. This means that she couldn't get up or down without hurting herself. Even though she is a cat, the ledge is high enough where she could hurt her legs. Also, she's a little overweight, so her weight could hurt her legs when she lands. So I was doing the ritual of grabbing a step stool and lifting her on top of the ledge, and got her up there safe and sound. I sat at the table on my phone waiting for her to start meowing, so I could get her down, because she usually doesn't stay up there more than 30 minutes. About an hour passed and I just figured that she fell asleep, so I walked into the living room to play some video games. Bree's litter box is in the basement, and the stairs to the basement are right behind the sitting area. As I was walking to the couch, Bree came trotting up the stairs. Again, this was impossible. There's no possible way she would have gotten down unscathed, and even if she had, the impact of her hitting the ground would be super loud, so I would hear her. I was also sitting near the ledge for an hour, so if someone came and took her down, I would have seen them. Now on to Eden. Edens are beyond weird and just plain scary. First off, Eden is a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. He was born February 8th, 2018. He's really little. We got him from a private breeder that lives near us. The day we first visited him at the breeder's house was when he was a month old, and super tiny. When we saw him there, he was Blenheim, white and light brown. At this point, he was too young to take home, so we didn't bring him home until April. On the day we went to pick him up, the breeder had all the puppies from the litter just running around in a little playpen area. I looked at all the puppies and didn't see a Blenheim puppy there. I asked the breeder where my puppy is, and she picked up a black and tan puppy. I told her that's not my puppy. She must have mixed it or something because the puppy we came to see was Blenheim. My sister looked at me like I was crazy. She pulled up a picture she took of the puppy laying on my chest, and he was black and tan. I was really confused, but I just figured it was my brain changing up memories as it tends to do. As the weeks went on, his black coat slowly started disappearing and becoming tan spots. Right now the black is completely gone, and he's now classified as Ruby. I just thought it was some kind of weird hair pigment disease. One day my mom was observing him, and said that he's getting noticeably bigger, as in growing up. So we pulled up the same picture of him laying on my chest from 2 months ago, to compare him now, and in the picture he was Ruby. At this point I got scared. I know for sure that in this picture he was black and tan. I started to freak out and told my mom about it. But she said he's always been Ruby. So my cat teleports and my dog changes color. I don't know if he's going to change color again, but I'm really freaked out about it. If there's any explanation for this, can someone tell me? I don't know if it's some kind of practical joke or what, but it's really bothering me. 3. So this was about 6 years ago. Back then I was 24 and very much in love with my new girlfriend at the time. Since our university was in her hometown, she was still living with her mother. Her father had died of cancer when she was about 8, and her mother never remarried. I always had the feeling that her house had this weird vibe, but it was nothing to freak out about. That is, besides that first night we spent alone. Her mother had left for the weekend to go to some spa resort with friends. Naturally, that meant we had the place to ourselves. When you are living in an apartment with 3 other guys, that is absolutely awesome. Instead of going back to my place, we would have the house for the whole weekend. After my last class of the week, I went to her place. We invited 2 or 3 friends and basically had a great Friday evening. Everything was normal that evening, and at one point around 11 p.m., our friends decided to go back to their place and we were finally alone. We had a late night snack and decided to call it a night. The way the house was designed, to get to her room, you had to go up 3 stairs and walk a few steps to get to the end of a short corridor. So we finished preparing to go to bed, and we both head to her room. She had the habit of closing her door because she had a cat that was pretty annoying at night, so we didn't want it to come in. About 5 seconds after she closed the door, she came in bed where I already was and started cuddling me. I will probably remember the 30 seconds that followed for the rest of my life. The event that took place is the only time in my 30 years of existence that I still cannot explain. As I am writing this, I have goosebumps running through my body simply reliving the moment. So as she started cuddling me, we started hearing the wooden floor stairs cracking like if someone was coming towards the room. Then, the shivers I have right now are making me uncomfortable as I write this. I swear to God, we heard walking like someone was getting closer to the door. At this point we both stopped kissing, and we are both focusing on the sounds we are hearing on the other side of the door, because we know that nobody is supposed to be there. What happened next is absolutely inexplicable. The door started rumbling like if a gust of wind had hit the door. The door kept vibrating for what felt like an eternity, but what was probably about 5 seconds, and then it clapped and stopped. Dead silence. At this point we were both startled and wondering what the actual fuck just happened. So I gather up my courage and get up and decide to open the door, still not fully realizing what has actually happened. In an anticlimactic way, the door opened, and there was absolutely nothing on the other side. I switched on the corridor light that happens to light up the corridor, but also the living room that is a bit further, and I see the cat on the living room couch with his head up, and eyes wide open looking startled. Other than that, nothing. I let the events of the last 30 seconds sink in, and start realizing that there's no way this door could have rumbled in that way. It rumbled very loudly, and in quick repetitions like someone was trying to bust it open by shaking the door handle. There was nothing that could have shook the door the way it did. I didn't know what I was expecting when I opened the door, but I also was not fully aware what I had just lived. What could have caused this? A few things to consider. We were in the middle of February, so all doors and windows were obviously shut since we lived in Canada, and there is no way you open any windows in February in the province of Quebec. Besides the 2 of us and the cat, the house was empty. The cat was not heavy enough to make the wooden door crack, plus it was clearly napping on the couch, and was woken up by the sounds. We dated for 2 years and I slept at her place probably hundreds of times after that, and nothing remotely similar to that ever happened. To this day I am still puzzled as to what happened. Was it some kind of glitch in the Matrix, some realities colliding, a ghost of the dead father? I have a very logical mind. I have a master's in physics. I am agnostic when it comes to unexplained events. I always try to find the rational solutions to unexplained events or situations. As a scientist, when I read other people's stories, I often find myself rationalizing and find possible explanations to what might have happened, or simply call the story fake. The problem with my story is that I know it actually happened. I was there, yet I cannot explain it. Sometimes I recall the event in my head and start wondering what would have happened if I had jumped out of bed to open the door while it was shaking. What would have happened if I had called out a hello? Then again, thinking about it still gives me shivers. Hopefully one day I will be able to understand. 4. A bit of backstory. I was and still am a happily married male, and at the time of this event I was in my late 20s. My paternal grandfather passed away when I was 18. I was very distraught when he passed. We were very close. Soon after his passing, my grandmother gave me his gold chain crucifix. He never took it off, and from the moment it was handed to me, neither did I. Well, at least, it was not often that I did. I would take it off if I was going to be in water, swimming, water sports, etc. It was late August, and my sister was having a birthday get-together. She lives in New York, and we live in New Jersey, about an hour away from one another. My wife and I attended. It was a great time, but I digress. When we were in our car ready to go home, as I was putting on my seatbelt, I realized my chain was not around my neck. I even asked my wife, "Hey, did you notice if I was wearing my chain earlier today?" She said she didn't really pay much attention, as I usually have it on. I looked everywhere for this chain, all over the car and my sister's house, but it wasn't there. The day prior I did happen to go swimming, so I most likely did take the chain off, but I remember distinctly placing it back around my neck once I was done. This made me extremely sad and upset. I could care less about its monetary value. This was my grandfather's chain, and instead of passing it down to my grandson one day, I lost it. Of course, I went to the place where I swam, but alas, it was not there. Days passed. I put up signs all around my sister's neighborhood, and even offered a cash reward. No one called. It was just gone. 1 week later, I was getting ready to work, and as I was grabbing some clothes from my closet, I noticed something from the corner of my eye, between the wall next to the closet and nightstand, on the floor next to my bed. Impossible, I thought. It was the chain neatly folded and clasped, just laying there. Now I know, it was there all along, right? Wrong. You know why? We were looking at photos from the day of my sister's birthday. As clear as day, I shit you not. The chain is clearly around my neck. This means that between having those pictures taken and getting into my car that day, the chain vanished from around my neck, teleported an hour away, and rematerialized where we lived in New Jersey, and neatly folded itself, clasped, I might add, on the floor of my bedroom. This is one of the strangest things that's ever happened to me. 5. We all have a dream, or dreams, that we either remember vividly, almost completely, or just a snapshot of a part of that dream. I've heard many surrounding this idea, so I can't be the only one. So to start, I'm 18 at the moment, and this dream I had must have been around the time I was 4 or 5. I had one of those dreams where I only remembered a snapshot. It's a bit boring, but once I explain my glitch, you might see why I thought it was weird. Anyways, all I remember from this dream was a stack of those wooden moving pallets. You know, the ones that have a gap held up by 2 pieces, between some pieces that lay across on top of supports. I'm trying to describe them, just look it up, if you don't know what I'm talking about. Anyways, all I remember was the wooden moving pallets being stacked up in a form like a cheerleader's pyramid against a wall, and walking past the corner of the wall, being that the area was somewhat open. Really random, right? This is the important part to remember for later. Flash forward to when I was 10 and my mom had decided the winter just prior that we were going on a vacation. And it was a nice vacation. We were going to Atlantis Paradise Islands in the Bahamas, a huge-ass resort that if you haven't been or seen on a cruise, you've probably seen on a commercial. And it was only my 2 sisters, my mom, and me. So this vacation was during the summer, in July, I think. Skip ahead to during the actual vacation. And during the 2nd or 3rd night, we decided to go over to the main islands with all the restaurants for one night, to save some money from the ridiculous prices inside the resort. Though we eat. My sister goes into the shop, kind of inside but next to the restaurant. And we leave to get a taxi back that we had taken there. As we're leaving, my eyes are just wandering, and I look over to this area that looks like a shipping drop-off area, and I suddenly feel like I'm tripping or having a serious case of déjà vu, because I see the exact snapshot, like a live photo from the dream I had 5 or 6 years ago. Like everything was the exact same, just in real life. I don't even know why I remembered the image from the most random dream, where I remember nothing else but that part. But more importantly, how I saw the future that didn't tell me anything. I couldn't tell that it was by the ocean in the dream, which is where the restaurant and open area were, which could have told me that it was around Florida or somewhere similar. This snapshot was so random that I had no idea until I actually went on the trip, which I only knew I was going on months before. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Glitch in the Matrix Stories, episode 68. Thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Well, it turns out that a lot of the problems I've been having with my audio recently were because my headphones were crap. Got a new set recently. Well, these aren't really like all-purposey headphones for listening to music and making everything sound great. These ones are more intended for literally just doing what I'm doing, and I've been meaning to buy a pair like that for a while. You know, just for monitoring audio when I'm recording it and, you know, checking the playback and everything. Still need to get a decent pair for listening to music on though. I have my eye on a set. They're very expensive, so it'll be many millions of years before I buy those. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.